So why should we use action-based research? According to Creswell, it is used to encourage change in schools. It fosters a democratic approach to education. It can empower individuals due to the nature of collaboration on projects. It positions teachers as learners where they are able to seek to narrow a gap between their current practice and their current vision of education. It encourages educators to be reflective. And lastly, it promotes a process for testing new ideas. Educational action research can be engaged in by a single teacher, by a group of colleagues who share an interest in a common problem, or the entire faculty of a school. Whatever the scenario, action research always involves the same 7-step process. These 7 steps, which will become an endless cycle for the inquiring teacher, are as follows. 1. Selecting a focus. 2. Clarifying theories. 3. Identifying research questions. 4. Collecting data. 5. Analyzing data. 6. Reporting the results. And 7. Taking an informed action.
There are 2 types of action-based research, practical and participatory. There are many aspects that overlap between the 2 types, but there are some differences as well. Practical action research is a smaller scale study that focuses on an individual teacher or classroom issue in order to improve teacher development and student learning. It can involve an individual teacher or team-based group of teachers with an inquiry approach. The teacher or teachers therefore become an active participant in the study as the researcher. With this type of research, there is a potential for impact on curriculum, instruction, and assessment. A teacher's practice is informed by data that is collected and analyzed throughout the study. The drawback to this type of research is that information and results from the study are not always shared because they can be very specific to that particular classroom, sample group, or school situation. The other type of action-based research is participatory, also known as PAR. Participatory action research is a larger scale study that focuses on empowering multiple schools or all schools within a school district or division. Studies analyze social issues that constrain individual lives with a focus on life-enhancing changes. Results from this type of research allows for the emancipation or liberation of the teacher researcher with the help of community involvement. The potential impact could be on allocation of resources, professional development activities, and organizational structures, which has a ripple effect on a larger population. A drawback to this larger scale research is that there is likely to be disagreements on processes, resulting in a longer period of time necessary to complete effective research. Aside from the differences, the overlapping aspects of both types of research include the involvement of multiple classrooms or a whole school issue. There is a partnership created within the school or schools participating in a shared vision. There is a potential impact on policies in addition to improved collegiality, collaboration, and communication with those involved. Lastly, both types of work towards implementing a plan of action to address the overall issue being studied. Some examples of action-based research can fall into 2 categories, practical and participatory. Under practical examples, this could include a teacher studying the behavior of a disruptive child in her classroom, a team of students and teachers studying the results of implementing a new math program in junior high. A community college instructor studies his professional development using technology in teaching. The impact of peer revision on student writing. The use of computers on student writing processes in a 4th grade classroom. For participatory examples, senior students initiate waste recycling. Teachers and students introduce periods of self-directed learning in the school week. Discriminatory allocation of college faculty salaries that favor men over women. Analyzing a mentor relationship between a teacher, intern, and university supervisor. And lastly, evaluating division-used textbooks that label and stereotype students. Both types of action research share common characteristics, and understanding these characteristics will help you better design your own study or help you to read, evaluate, and use action research. These include a practical focus, for which the aim is to address and solve an actual problem within a classroom, school, community, or district so that the solutions can be applied with immediate benefits for education. A study is done to examine a teacher or researcher's own practices rather than someone else's, with constant self-reflection done as part of the process. Collaboration can involve co-participants, such as other teachers, students, staff, administrators, parents, or community stakeholders that can help to review results of findings, help collect data, or assist in the presentation of the final report. Collaboration must be done ethically and purposefully by establishing acceptable and cooperative relationships and communicating appropriately with all those involved in the study. It is a dynamic process that involves iterations or activities for which the researcher spirals back and forth between the reflection of the problem, data collection, and action. This process does not follow a linear pattern from problem to action. During the process, the researcher formulates a plan of action in response to the problem. This could include formally or informally presenting the data to important stakeholders, establishing a pilot program, starting several competing programs, or implementing an ongoing research agenda to explore new practices. Lastly, a characteristic involves sharing the research. In addition to publishing in scholarly journals, action researchers are typically more interested to share their reports to educators within the school, community, or district who can immediately use the results because they are looking to promote change or enact plans within their classroom or building. Benefits of action-based research includes a focus on school issues, problems, or an area of collective concern, which helps give relevance and validity of the study. It is also comforting to parents and administrators to know that a teacher is transforming knowledge into something meaningful. It is also a form of teacher professional development, which allows them to grow and gain confidence in their work, influence their thinking skills, and give them a sense of efficacy, provide them with willingness to share and communicate, and promotes positive attitudes towards the process of change in themselves and others. The collegial interactions gets pairs of teachers together to allow time to share their teaching styles, strategies, and thoughts with others, to examine instructional approaches, learning activities, and curricular materials. Strong relationships are also a result of this collaborative research. There is the potential to impact school change by looking at prioritizing school planning and assessment efforts with potential to motivate change for improvement. It allows one to reflect on their own practices and take a look at one's own teaching in a structured manner with a focus on arriving at an understanding rather than attempting to fix things. Lastly, it improves communications by bringing individuals together for a shared purpose for more flexible thinking in order to be more open to new ideas with a topic of exploration. However, there are some disadvantages to this type of research. This includes the demand on a teacher's time to not only teach, but do extensive work on the process of repeatedly planning, implementing, and reflecting on the study. It will inevitably include research bias, due to the researcher being the teacher who can manipulate variables, sometimes unknowingly, rather than being an outsider analyzing the study. Results are not usually generalizable because each study is designed for a specific group of participants in a particular setting with a personal agenda in mind. Having said that, depending on the study, some results can be tested by another teacher in their own classroom. Models and processes can be convoluted, which may consume a teacher as well.
To evaluate an action research study, researchers can consider using the following criteria to assess its quality. Number 1, focus on one issue in their practice or local community. 2, collect multiple sources of data to help address the problem. Data can be both quantitative and qualitative. 3, show respect for all collaborators. They should be treated as equal partners in the action research process. 4, advance a plan of action for trying to solve the problem. 5, reflect on your own development as a professional. 6, help to enhance the lives of participants by solving a problem, empowering them, changing them, or providing them with new understandings. 7, develop a plan recommending changes to practice. And 8, report the research in a way that is understandable and useful to your audience, including other professionals. Creswell states that ethical issues are central to conducting action research that involves participants in a substantial way. When teachers are using action research, first and foremost, they are bound by common principles that guide how they relate to each other as professionals. As with any teaching practice, questions of ethics are central to all aspects of action research in schools. Teachers can use the following 4 types of ethical practices when conducting action research. Number 1, ethics of hope. Action research should be informed by concern for the broad range of needs of students and the school community. Number 2, ethics of caring. At all times, the general welfare of both students and teachers must be kept at the fore. Number 3, ethics of openness. It is important that both the questions and the ways the teacher researchers work through them are made clear to colleagues and school members. Number 4, ethics of responsibility. The welfare of students and the need to maintain good working relationships must be kept in mind at all times. We looked at 3 different research studies centered around developing pre-service teachers. All of the research studies used action research and followed similar multi-step processes. Some of the common steps they used were select a focus, collect data, analyze and interpret data, reflect, and then continue, modify. The research studies followed a process much like Kemmis and McTaggart's action research spiral. This process is not rigid and allows researchers to revise their study's focus, which then guides the next step for the research. Each of the studies worked through the different steps and phases more than once.
Teaching is a craft. It's both an art and a science, which is why great teachers always experiment and make tons of mistakes. But how do you know what's actually working? Well, one option is action research. Here you can identify a question, test out a strategy, gather data, and determine if it works. The end result is something dynamic, innovative, and tied directly to your classroom. Action research dissolves the barrier between the participants and the researchers. In other words, the teacher actively participates in the situation while also conducting the research. There are many action research frameworks, but they generally follow a similar process. You start out in phase 1, planning for research. Here you begin with inquiry, where you define a specific research question. It needs to be something that can actually be tested. Next, you conduct a literature review to gain a deeper understanding of the topic. Finally, you move into the design process, where you determine your data methods, consider ethical issues, get the required permissions, create deadlines, and set up the systems. Next, you move into the action phase. This is where you engage in multiple cycles of experimentation and data collection. Your data collection might include qualitative data like observations, artifacts, and interviews, or quantitative data like rubric scores, surveys, or achievement data. Afterward, you move to analysis. You'll often start by organizing the data with charts or graphs and looking for specific trends. You might also discuss it with peers, free write in a journal, or create a cluster map before eventually writing out your results. Finally, you have your conclusion. This is where you share your research with the world and reflect on your own practice. This will ultimately lead to newer questions, and the cycle will continue as you refine your craft as a better, more creative teacher.
Now that you've watched our video, please read the following questions and come prepared with answers for our discussion on Monday.